It's my money too, Sandra screamed, waving the declined credit card in my face. I calmly said, "You're right." She looked victorious, thinking she'd won another argument about her spending, until she tried to buy underwear at Victoria's Secret and every single card was declined. My name is David. I'm 52 years old, senior financial advisor at Meridian Wealth Management. For 18 years, I'd been married to Sandra, and for the last 2 years, I'd been unknowingly financing her affair through her shopping addiction. The scene at the mall was spectacular. Sandra stood at the Victoria's Secret counter with $400 worth of agent provocateur lingerie, her face cycling through confusion, embarrassment, and rage as card after card came back declined. The teenage cashier looked uncomfortable. Other customers were staring. Sandra's perfect image was crumbling in real time. It started innocuously enough in early 2022. Sandra had always been fashionable, but suddenly she developed what seemed like an obsession with expensive lingerie. La Perla sets for $600, agent provocateur pieces for $400, custom-fitted bras from boutiques I'd never heard of. "I'm investing in feeling good about myself," she'd explain when the credit card statements arrived. "A woman needs to feel beautiful." At first, I thought it was a midlife confidence boost. Sandra was 46, still stunning, but maybe feeling insecure about aging. If expensive underwear made her feel better, it seemed like a reasonable investment in our marriage. The amounts escalated quickly. $800 in January, $200 in February. By March, she was spending $2,000 monthly on lingerie alone. That wasn't counting the matching robes, the silk pajamas, the loungewear that cost more than most people's rent. "David, you make good money," she'd say when I raised concerns. "We can afford this." I made $340,000 annually. Sandra worked part-time as a yoga instructor, bringing in maybe $18,000. In her mind, my income was our income, which meant her spending was unlimited. What bothered me wasn't the money, it was the secrecy. She'd hide shopping bags, tear up receipts, and get defensive when I asked about specific purchases. The woman who used to model new outfits for me was suddenly private about her lingerie choices. "It's personal," she'd say. "A woman needs some mystery." By summer 2022, I was tracking her spending through our joint accounts. Professional habit from 25 years in financial planning: document everything, analyze patterns, identify anomalies. The patterns were troubling. Large purchases always preceded girls' nights out or yoga retreats I never heard details about. She'd buy expensive lingerie on Thursday, disappear Friday evening, and come home Saturday afternoon with vague explanations about spa time with the girls. December 15th, 2022. Sandra's phone buzzed during dinner, and she grabbed it with unusual urgency. When she went to the bathroom, she left it on the table, unlocked. I shouldn't have looked. 20 years of marriage should build trust stronger than curiosity. But financial advisors are trained to notice discrepancies, and Sandra's behavior had been one long discrepancy. The text was from someone named Mark. "Can't wait to see you in that red set tomorrow. You looked incredible last time." My stomach dropped. I scrolled up, finding months of messages, photos of Sandra and the lingerie I'd been paying for, detailed discussions about which pieces looked best and what she should wear for their next meeting. Mark wasn't subtle about his preferences. "Love the black La Perla from last week. Worth every penny." Another message. "That agent provocateur set is perfect for Friday. Bring the matching robe too." I sat in our dining room looking at 18 months of credit card statements with new understanding. Every expensive purchase had been for him. Every girls' night had been a lie. I'd been financing my wife's affair with methodical precision. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, it was the financial arrogance. She was spending our money to look beautiful for another man, then coming home and lecturing me about a woman's right to feel confident. I took photos of the messages, noted the dates, and began planning. Financial planning teaches you to think systematically about risk management. Sandra was a risk I needed to contain. Over the next 3 months, I quietly restructured our financial life. First, I consulted with Harrison and Associates, the best family law firm in the city. They walked me through asset protection strategies and evidence-gathering procedures. "Document everything," attorney Karen Harrison advised. "Dates, amounts, evidence of adultery. Make sure your financial assets are protected." I opened new accounts at different banks, transferred my direct deposits to a solo checking account, created a revocable trust for our major assets with myself as the sole trustee. All perfectly legal moves for a financial professional managing family wealth. The joint accounts remained active, but I gradually reduced the available credit limits. From $15,000 to $10,000 to $5,000? Sandra didn't notice. She was too busy planning lingerie purchases for her twice-weekly meetings with Mark. By March 2023, I had complete documentation of her affair. Screenshots of hundreds of messages. Photos she'd sent him in lingerie purchased with our money. A detailed spreadsheet connecting purchase dates to meeting dates. $47,000 in adultery-related spending over 18 months. I also had protection. Our house was in the trust. My retirement accounts were separate property. The joint credit cards had reduced limits. And I'd opened a household expenses account with a $2,000 monthly budget that included a $500 personal spending allocation for Sandra. Everything was ready, I just needed the right moment. May 8th, 2023. Sandra came home from lunch with girlfriends carrying 3 Victoria's Secret bags. $100 worth of lingerie, according to the receipt I found in her purse. Another investment in feeling beautiful, I asked. Don't start, David. I work hard. I deserve nice things. Of course you do. She seemed surprised by my agreement. Usually her spending led to arguments about budgets and priorities. But I'd moved past anger into documentary mode. That evening, Sandra announced she'd be spending the weekend at a yoga retreat in the mountains. The same retreat she'd mentioned 6 times in the past 4 months, always after major lingerie purchases. Sounds wonderful, I said. You should take that new red set you bought. You look beautiful in red. She blushed, probably thinking about Mark's appreciation for that particular color. While Sandra was at her retreat, I finalized the financial restructuring, canceled the joint credit cards, transferred the remaining joint account balance to the household expenses account, left her with access to exactly $500 in spending money. When she returned Sunday evening, glowing with what she probably thought was yoga-induced wellness, everything was ready. Tuesday morning, Sandra announced she needed to run errands. Meeting the girls for lunch, then some shopping. Have fun, I said. She kissed my cheek, grabbed her purse full of credit cards, and headed out to finance another session with Mark. 3 hours later, my phone rang. David, there's something wrong with our cards. Sandra's voice was tight with stress. They're all being declined. That's strange. Where are you? Victoria's Secret. I'm trying to buy a few things, but none of the cards work. I could hear the frustration in her voice. Probably embarrassment, too. Sandra hated public scenes, and a declined credit card at an expensive store would feel humiliating. Let me call the bank, I said. There might be a fraud alert. Can you hurry? People are staring. 20 minutes later, she called again, this time from Agent Provocateur. David, I tried a different store, but the cards still don't work. Even the American Express. That is strange. I have an appointment this afternoon. I really need these things. An appointment? With Mark, presumably. She needed new lingerie for her affair and couldn't understand why the financing had suddenly dried up. Maybe try a department store, I suggested. Sometimes the boutiques have system issues. Another hour passed, another call. David, I'm at Nordstrom now. Same problem. What's going on? I'm not sure, sweetheart. Let me look into it. That evening, Sandra came home empty-handed and furious. She'd spent 4 hours trying to buy lingerie for her lover, only to discover her unlimited spending days were over. This is ridiculous, she announced. I have rights. It's my money, too. You're absolutely right, I said calmly. She looked surprised by my agreement. So you'll fix whatever's wrong with the cards? Actually, nothing's wrong. The cards are working exactly as intended. What do you mean? I pulled out a folder I'd been preparing for months. I restructured our finances. You now have access to a household budget with a $500 monthly allocation for personal spending. $500? That's insulting. It's actually quite generous for discretionary spending. Discretionary. Sandra's voice was rising. I'm your wife. I have every right to spend our money however I want. Our money, I repeated. Interesting phrase. I opened the folder, revealing printed screenshots of her messages with Mark. Photos she'd sent him in lingerie purchased with my income. Detailed records of dates and amounts. Sandra's face went white. Where did you get those? Your phone, December 15th. You left it unlocked during dinner. She sat down heavily, the fight going out of her. David, I can explain. No need. I've had 5 months to understand the situation. $47,000 in lingerie purchases? All for Mark. All paid for with my income, while you lectured me about your rights as a wife. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been using our joint finances to fund an affair. The expensive underwear, the mysterious shopping trips, the defensive behavior about spending, it all makes sense now. Sandra was crying, but I felt nothing. Financial advisors learn to compartmentalize emotions when dealing with numbers. This was just another portfolio to rebalance. What happens now? She whispered. Now you live within a budget. $500 monthly for personal expenses. If you want to continue buying lingerie for Mark, you'll need to find other financing. You can't control my spending like that. Actually, I can. The joint accounts are closed. The credit cards are canceled. You have access to a household budget for legitimate expenses and a modest personal allowance. I pulled out another document. I also have 18 months of documented adultery evidence. If you want to discuss divorce, we can do that. But I'd recommend you speak with your own attorney first. Sandra stared at the papers, finally understanding her position. No more unlimited spending. No more financing her affair with my money. No more playing the wronged wife when confronted about her behavior. This is financial abuse, she said weakly. No, it's financial responsibility. You can spend $500 monthly however you want. But you can't spend my income on your lover anymore. 3 months later, Sandra was still in the house, still married to me, but living under very different terms. The household budget covered groceries, utilities, her yoga classes, and reasonable personal expenses. Her $500 monthly allowance could buy nice lingerie, just not the $600 sets she'd grown accustomed to. Mark apparently lost interest when Sandra could no longer afford agent provocateur. Turns out his appreciation for expensive lingerie was directly proportional to who was paying for it. Sandra tried various approaches to regain financial access. Tears, anger, promises to change, threats of divorce. None worked. I documented everything, protected our assets, and established clear boundaries. You're treating me like a child, she complained one evening. I'm treating you like someone who spent $47,000 on adultery, I replied. If you want to be treated like a trusted financial partner, you need to act like one. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 2 years, Sandra had insisted on her right to our money while spending it on another man. Now she had exactly what she'd asked for. Her fair share of our income, allocated responsibly. Professional financial planning teaches you that money problems are usually behavior problems. Sandra's spending wasn't about feeling beautiful or investing in confidence. It was about financing infidelity while maintaining the moral high ground. 6 months after the credit card incident, Sandra asked for a serious conversation. We sat in our living room, the same place where she'd once lectured me about her rights as a wife. I want to save our marriage, she said. Okay, but I need to know you can trust me again. Trust is earned through consistent behavior over time, I replied. Right now, you have a track record of 18 months of deception and financial manipulation. I ended things with Mark. I know I have access to your phone records now. She flinched at that reminder. Complete financial transparency was part of our new arrangement. What would it take for you to consider increasing my spending allowance? A year of honest behavior, couples counseling, and full financial disclosure going forward. That seems fair. It was fair. It was also protective. Sandra had demonstrated she couldn't be trusted with unlimited access to our finances. The structure I'd created protected both our marriage and our assets. A year later, Sandra's spending allowance increased to $800 monthly. Not enough for weekly agent provocateur shopping, but sufficient for a reasonable lifestyle. She'd earned the increase through consistent honesty and genuine effort to rebuild trust. The expensive lingerie collection gathered dust in her dresser. Without Mark to appreciate it, Sandra discovered she preferred comfortable cotton underwear from department stores. Funny how spending priorities change when you're using your own money instead of financing an affair. Financial planning teaches you that protection isn't paranoia, it's prudence. When I restructured our finances, I wasn't being vindictive. I was managing risk. Sandra had demonstrated poor judgment with money and a willingness to lie for personal gain. Those behaviors needed systematic correction, not emotional confrontation. The credit card incident at Victoria's Secret wasn't revenge. It was natural consequences. When you max out cards buying lingerie for your lover, you lose the privilege of unlimited spending. Sandra learned that women's rights don't include the right to spend your husband's money on adultery. Financial partnership requires mutual respect and honest communication. She'd violated both. I learned that professional skills translate directly to personal protection. 25 years of helping clients protect their assets gave me the tools to protect my own when needed. The marriage survived, but on new terms. Sandra earns trust through behavior, not demands. She spends within agreed limits, not emotional arguments. She contributes to our financial goals instead of undermining them. Sometimes the best way to save a relationship is to stop enabling destructive behavior. Sandra's shopping addiction wasn't about feeling beautiful. It was about financing betrayal. Once the financing stopped, so did the betrayal. Money doesn't solve relationship problems, but it can certainly reveal them. Sandra's spending patterns exposed her priorities more clearly than any conversation could have. The $47,000 she spent on lingerie for Mark was expensive education, but it taught us both valuable lessons about respect, trust, and the difference between partnership and exploitation. Building something that lasts, whether it's a financial plan or a marriage, requires honest assessment of risks and realistic protective measures. Sandra was a risk I learned to manage systematically. The folder of evidence sits in my office safe, rarely referenced but never forgotten. It reminds us both that trust, once broken, must be rebuilt through consistent action over time. Sandra occasionally jokes about her lingerie phase, but we both know it was more serious than that. It was a $47,000 lesson in financial ethics and marital respect. She pays for her own underwear now. Cotton, comfortable, and purchased with money she's earned honestly. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. The credit cards that once financed her affair now have reasonable limits and full transparency. Every purchase is visible, every statement is reviewed together, and every dollar is accounted for. That's not financial control. It's financial partnership. Something we should have established 18 years ago, before expensive lingerie and secret lovers complicated our balance sheet. Professional competence, methodical preparation, and quiet confidence. The same principles that built my career also saved my marriage. Sometimes the most important work happens in spreadsheets and legal documents, not emotional confrontations. Sandra deserved exactly what she got: natural consequences for poor choices and an opportunity to rebuild trust through honest behavior. The fact that she took that opportunity says something about her character. The fact that I was prepared to protect our assets regardless of her choice says something about mine. Subscribe if you agree.